Nam aloha, everyone. So this reading is on Sinead O'Connor. And she's an interesting figure for a lot of reasons. And this is August 2nd, the recording's taking place, but she passed away last week. So I really want to focus on her as a symbol. Of course, she had her own human experience, but as a spiritual symbol of the time that we're in right now. And she plays an important role in our evolutionary process into the Aquarian age, the great shift of the ages. So this is a spiritual reading, right? Neutrino astrology. So this is her human design chart here, which we'll get into. But I think to lay down the foundation properly, we have to go into her past life, right? Her past life. Because a lot of her karma and how things played out for her is directly connected to her past life, as you'll see here. So the South Node represents her recent past life, and you can see here that it's all in Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio, in the 12th house. And Neptune is conjunct Mercury. So what's the story here is that she was committed to an asylum or a women's girls care facility by her family. And her family was very powerful, prosperous in their community, and she was a victim of male violence, a rape from a male in the community that she belonged to. So very out in the public, right, this community. And a decision was made by her, and I put that in quotation marks, is to save the reputation of this man who impregnated her, basically, and his family for appearance sake, and go willingly to the care home for girls, women, and stay there to have the baby. This was all run by the Catholic Church. Or bring shame to this man and both their families. So she was manipulated, and this shame was imposed on her, right? So she was very innocent and young, very young. So there was no choice, obviously, right? She was bullied into it. And the man may have deceived her and promised her once that she had the baby, she could come back and they would start a family, because Neptune and Mercury in Scorpio are there, and this brings deception and manipulation. So he and his family paid for her stay and left her there until she died. So she was betrayed, right, when she went to this care facility, and she lost her baby. They actually took the baby away from her, the Catholic nuns, and gave it up for adoption without her consent. So there's a lot of grief there. So she remained in a fantasy of hope that he would return and save her and bring her to her baby. And so there in the asylum, she lost herself, she lost her voice, she lost her mind, she may have gotten insane. And she was deaf, because we got the shadow of the 43, deaf to her own inner voice, and felt powerlessness, right? So lots of trauma in Scorpio in her past life, and lots of regrets that she didn't stand up for herself, and she gave her power away. And lost her innocence, and there was a lot of shame and guilt for not saving her child. So this is the ancestral pattern that she came in to transmute. So what's that about? Well, if we go back to the sun, do you see the black side is all the conscious? It's called the conscious. Basically, we have a binary consciousness. So the black side is the date, the time of birth, the location, what you would give for an astrology reading. And then the red side is the unconscious, and this is 120 days after conception. So these are the ancestral patterns, all the red side, that are laid down in the fetus, right? So the soul is kind of hovering around before the 120th day, kind of choosing which mother, because it's really choosing the mother. Which mother am I going to choose? that's best for me to grow and evolve as a soul in this lifetime, right? So then she committed to the 120 days, and these are all the right. These are the patterns that are laid down for her. So they're very karmic. And this one in particular, you can see the sun up here is 47.1. Well, that's the shadow of oppression. It's the gift of transfiguration, and it's the city of transmutation. Each one of these comes with shadow patterns and gifts. So she came here to transmute heavy, heavy karmic ancestral patterns, actually to break those patterns from this ancestral line. So this had, because she was from Ireland, so this has to do with the Catholic Church in Ireland, right? The oppression of women and children. Okay, so this was the ancestral karma that she came in to transmute, right? And the Catholic Church was a very powerful institution, right? It still is, but it doesn't hold the power that it once did. And it basically controlled, the Catholic Church as an institution controlled the masses in Europe, right? Economically and politically. They owned 1/3 of all land in Europe, and the Pope had authority over all the kings in Europe, right? So they completely took over Ireland. They exploited these people and oppressed these people. And so basically, the Catholic Church claimed to be we're the caretakers of your soul. So Ireland was like a theocracy. The church doctrine actually made the laws in Ireland. It was very, very oppressive. So with Sinead O'Connor, so she was incarnated in this society, in this culture for a reason, right? So she said as a young child, I loved the Catholic Church, right? Here she is at her first communion. And that was the contract I made with the Holy Spirit. I believed it all. So again, this echo of this naivete, right? Right here, right with the Six of Cups and Neptune here, right? But if you look down to the fourth house, you see that? In her astrology chart with Chiron, conjunct Chiron. Look, they're only 2 degrees apart. In Pisces, this is her family. This is her mother. So her mother was very Saturnian, so disciplinarian, cold, right? Wherever you see Saturn, it's cold and dry, and you're restricted. So my sense is that her mother came in from this asylum, like she knew her from the asylum, and she continued the abuse. So there was a lot of abuse here from the mother that she talks about in her book, and she openly talks about it in interviews and things like that, right? So but her mother she acknowledged as she was an adult that her mother was a product of this system, right, of the Catholic Church in Ireland and the oppression, and just the way that she was treated, right, as a child, like viciously, right, abused physically, emotionally, even sexually by her mother, right? But she wanted to be good, right, and that's from this placement, Neptune in the 12th house. So okay, so this is the foundation of what she's come into in this lifetime. And then let's go into the Magdalene laundries. So these are very famous institution in Ireland, right? And this has to do with the 47. So you see it right there. This is the crown chakra, and this is the mind, the ajna. So there's the 47. So at 14 years old, she was sent to a care home for troubled girls, and that was next to the infamous Magdalene laundries in Ireland. So the Magdalene laundries were originally known as the asylums. They opened up in Dublin in 1795, and then they converted into Catholic-run laundries in the early 1920s. So this was used as a refuge for fallen women, right? So these were the unmarried mothers, right? Teenage girls, girls with learning difficulties, and abuse victims, right? So they said often the teenage girl or woman was raped by one of the pillars of the community, and then they were locked away and then forced to work long hours without pay. So many Irish institutions at that time, including government departments, they had contracts with them. So they were making money. They were making money from these women who were working for free. So it's estimated, they say, that there was 30,000 women and girls ended up in these laundries where they were held as virtual prisoners. And the last laundry didn't close until 1996. So take note of that. That's not too long ago, 1996. And then finally in 2001, the Irish government finally acknowledged that women at the laundries had been victims of abuse, and many told stories of sexual, psychological, and physical abuses, right? So this is where Sinead returned. So if you have the 47, you're often going to return to the place that it all went down, right, in her past life. So she was there for a reason, right? So these girls were working for free, doing laundry. And like I said, the institutions had contracts with them, even in the government. So they're getting a deal here. And they worked for free, taking care of the babies of unwed mothers too. So the nuns would just take the babies away and adopt them out. And actually, there was an economy there too, that they found out that a lot of these kids that were adopted, they were getting money for it, right? So at 14, Sinead was put in a care home for the girls, and it was right next to this Magdalene laundry. So she said basically we were told we were terrible people and didn't deserve to live by the nuns. Okay, so in one particular, she was quite rebellious too, even at this age, that she got into some kind of trouble, and they sent her to the laundries next door to the Magdalene laundries. And she said she met these women, right, that had been there since the 1920s. So they were there since they were girls, and nobody was taking care of them. There were no nuns taking care of them or nurses, and they were screaming for the nuns and nurses. And a lot of them were, not very well mentally or physically or emotionally. And it scared her. So this was her, like, here's your past life, Sinead, right? Here's your past life. That's what the divine is showing her, right? So it scared her. So the gift of this experience while she was here is music. So there was a guitar teacher that taught her guitar and got her to sing, and really encouraged this talent in her. So basically, if we go back to the past life, she lost her voice, right? She lost her voice. And then in this experience, in this lifetime, it was like her voice was given back to her through music, right? So the other thing to note too is shame. So one of her karmic wound, her deepest karmic wound here is 33.3, and this is shame, right? So shame. She came in with a lot of shame, and this was to be transmuted. It was part of her contract, right? With the oppression and shame. And we'll get into the guilt in a little bit here. So this is generational shame. So these are the unspoken rules, right? And the Catholic Church is masters of this, of manipulating swaths of people through shame. So these are the unspoken rules passed down through families, right? So they would take these girls in Ireland who were like flirting with a boy. They were flirting with a boy when they're teenagers. It's just normal now, right? They would send, well, the family would say, well, she's had it. She's going to be a fallen woman. We better take her to this care home for girls, right? So just things like that, they would be sent. They would be sent, and it was all ruled by the Catholic Church, right? And then they had the police and everything behind that, and the laws behind that too. Okay, so this would be like an example of shame. You don't do this. You don't show your body in this way, right? So you don't know they exist, these rules, until you cross them, and then you're shamed. And shame is an imposition, right? It's from one person to the next. So there can be shame about the body, social status, debt, sexuality, not fitting in, right? It all comes from the family, but the greater community. So shame as a child gets internalized as low self-worth. She's mentioned that quite a few times, where especially when she was just beginning in her career, that she felt that she was a fraud and she didn't really have good self-esteem or self-worth, plus her family background, right? And basically it's I'm not good enough. That's the message, right? So the voice of shame, I need to hide, I don't deserve to exist, I'm defective, I'm unworthy of being known and loved, I'm a mistake. Her mother said that to her a lot. You're a mistake, I never wanted you. I deserve to be left, abandoned, betrayed. I shouldn't want more, right? Whatever that is. It's wrong for me to express a need. I'm too broken. There's no hope for me. I'll never heal whatever this thing is. I'll never heal this money problem. I've tried everything. And this gets translated to a hatred of your physical body. And that's the ego's firstborn, right? We don't have a name when we're born. So we incarnate, we're given a name, and then our firstborn, the ego's firstborn, first attachment, first identification is with your body, right? And that gets shame gets embedded there. So you got a sense of what she was dealing with in this lifetime, right? So if we go into where do we want to go next? If we go into just her gifts, let's look at her gifts, because she's very, very talented, right? We go into the gifts. Well, the 12th house. So she's got Mercury and Neptune in the 12th house. She would often say, I'm channeling my subconscious. I just had these songs inside me that had to come out, that had to come out. So the 12th house this is the spiritual house. This is when the veils start to dissolve. It's the house of undoing. That's why they call it that, because everything dissolves in the 12th house. So she's got two planets in the South Node. So through her experience of isolation, she became very spiritual. I would say even merged with the divine, with these and the experience of oneness and unity with these placements, right? Um, so so she was extremely psychic, and she talked about this, that she could basically astro travel. I don't know if she had any control over it, but she talked about being able to see inside other people's houses and see the furniture and actually see physical things. Her mind could travel elsewhere, and it would be proven correct, right? So extremely psychic, and that's the Neptune, right? That's double 12th house, right? Neptune in there too, and Mercury. And Mercury is the communicator between the material world and the gods. So she was able to communicate from the other side, right? So extremely psychic and connected to her ancestors. So this channeling, yes, from her ancestors, but probably for all these women that she was with in her past life, right? The Magdalene girls, right? Channeling their anger, right? Of being oppressed and being controlled and dominated by the Catholic Church, the patriarchy, right? Wrongfully, right? So this is where her songs and her singing comes from. And she talked about, if you look at her in her interviews and stuff, she's quite demure. She's really, really shy and introverted. And that's from this her profile, right? 47.1 and 5.5. Her profile is 5-1, is 5-1-1-5. And so the first line is solitude. It's quiet, it's introverted. She needed solitude. She needed a lot of solitude with the first line like that. So she had these two sides to her, right? So the one side was really, really shy. And then she had the other the other side of her, which is the performer. So she would be channeling this anger. That's what I see. And she said it was like it was my healing, right? It was my healing to get up on the stage and just scream, right? From that emotional body, that frustration and all those stuck emotions in her emotional body. So and that's interesting too, because if you look, she's got Venus and Sagittarius in her first house. That's beauty, right? People who have Venus in their first house, their beautiful face, right? The first house represents your face. And the second house is where you make money, where you can earn money. We talk about this in my prosperity webinars. So that's Capricorn rules her because she's Sag rising. With this is the whole system. Capricorn in the second house. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, right? So this is the voice too. The second house represents the voice. So she's connected to, right? 2 and 4 are connected, that she can sing. That's how she makes her money, from the wounding from her mother. So she said a lot of her songs were about her mother, right? So this is connected with those emotions that were stuck, right, with Saturn in there, and wounded the emotional body. She got to channel that out in her music, and you'll see with human design echoes that too, because look, this is the solar plexus. If we go back to the bigger chart here, right? That's the solar plexus. Do you see the brown there? And then the other brown is the throat. So she's got this channel, it's called the 36, hooking up with the 35, and that makes the channel of transitoriness. It's about having experiences, human experiences, but it's also about singing straight from her emotions, right to her throat. And people would say when they first heard her voice, and when she got famous too, that they were moved, right? They were moved, emotionally moved. And that's very challenging, right? To be emotionally moved by someone, emotionally moved by someone's voice. And she said that started with her mother, right? If we go back to this, her mother is Saturn in the fourth house in this lifetime, that she would soothe her. Her mother was quite violent, right? She would soothe her mother through her voice, right? So that was a learned behavior, how much healing was found in her voice, right? So that's a very powerful channel for her because it stirs the emotional body of other people that need to move energy, right? And so remember that we're evolving through the emotional body for the Aquarian age. So it's really important, right, to get this stuck energy moving out of the emotional body, right? To be pure. It's called purification. So, and then the other channel she had here is the 59-6, and that's the channel of intimacy. So there's the larger, so you can see it, see, 59-6. So this is called the sacral, and that's the solar plexus there. So she's singing, she's driven to sing from her emotional body, driven to have new experiences through her emotional body. And then she's got this channel of intimacy. So this penetrates, right? This penetrates the egoic barriers of other people. So it creates an intimacy between you and the other person, the one that has this. So do you see how powerful this is? To be singing straight from her emotional body and then creating this intimacy with the people that are listening to her music. That's why people were so moved by the no one compares to you. This is intimacy. Here she is, right in her 59-6 and her 35-36 right here, and how people responded to this, because we all love to be moved emotionally. We really do, because it feels good. It feels real, right? Like you're a human, like it's real. And actually, the record executive, when she finally recorded the album and everything, and it was ready to go, he listened to it, and then he read the lyrics, and he said, no, we can't put this out. It's like reading someone's diary. And she said, no, No, trust me, people need this. So she knows what people need, right? And this emotional intimacy, and so many people responded so well, right? To the honesty and the authenticity and the emotional honesty. So those are great gifts for her. And then the other ones are 214. This is the channel. It's called the channel of the beat. She's got the channel of the beat right here. So she knows where she's going. This is like the second is the second gate is connected to the magnetic monopole. That's what attracts life experiences to us. It doesn't repel, it attracts, it keeps us on our trajectory of time and space, what we're here to do in this lifetime, right? So she's got that whole channel. So she knew where she wanted to go, even as a teenager. There was no other plan B or plan C. It was all about music and singing. This is the 214. She automatically had that GPS. And the great thing about this is it's orientation, right? And she was able to orient other people by them just being in her aura, right? And then she's got the 1156 up here as well. That's another gift. And this is called the channel of curiosity. This is the storyteller. So taking all of her experiences from her past, this is her songwriting, right? Her experiences in her relationships and her relationship with her mother, and be able to create this beautiful story, right? And songs are stories, right? So that was an incredible gift for her too. Okay, the channel of experience. And then let's look at her Pluto. So you can see up here, Pluto is in the 10th house conjunct Uranus, right? Pluto and Uranus conjunct together. So what was the Pluto in the 10th house saying for her? Well, what was her soul contract? I have to take care of myself emotionally. I have to be my own father and my own mother, and to understand the wisdom of my emotions. So she talked about that when she was singing. She said it was how I felt. Can I connect to this song emotionally? Then it's my song. She already knew the wisdom of that, of our emotions. And the wisdom of our emotions, this is the age of Aquarius. A lot of people think Aquarius is a water sign because the water bearer is the symbol, but it's not. It's an air sign. And we're moving into this age of Aquarius. Pluto's going to be in Aquarius next year, right? For a 20-year transit. So we have to get used to this energy, right? So those wiggly lines aren't water, they're actually energy. They're energy. So what happens is with the emotional body is we have to clear up the emotional body that's stuck from childhood, all those stuck emotions that we feel that come up and we react to. They don't have to do anything with the present moment. They have to do with the past. Once they start to purify, what's left is the information field. This is the evolution through the emotional body, and there's the information field, right? And that's what we have to learn to translate, basically, right? Energy. It's all about energy for the age of Aquarius. So the wisdom of the emotions is purifying the emotions and letting them move, and then reading that information field. So with Pluto in the 10th house, she was here to embrace making herself emotionally secure, being receptive, sensitive, psychic, gentle, tender, vulnerable, nurturing and caring, have emotional intelligence, and out in the world, nurturing other people, not in her shell, but out in the world, nurturing other people. Okay, so let's go into this profile again, right? So we talked about the first line, she needs a lot of solitude. And then there's the fifth line. So this is the heretic investigator, the 5-1 right here. So the 5-1, the heretic, right, is projection. So what they have around their aura, they have the mystique around the aura, the fifth lines, and people can't really see them. They may not be aware of it. They can't really see them. It's like there's a lot of glamoring around this person. I can't really see them inside them, but I know that they're important to me. They're here. You may not even be able to express that. It's like, oh, Sinead is really here to deliver an important message to me, right? So there can be a projection. So if the message is, and if you've got a fifth line, you're going to relate to this of getting projected upon. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with that other person. So if you don't deliver a solution, a practical solution to that person, like here's what you do, here's my feedback, and it's not rooted, not grounded, then they're going to project devil onto you, right? And if it's solid, it's like, oh, that really helped. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like her music, then they project saint onto her, onto her. But it has nothing to do with her. It's all about that person and what they're projecting, devil or saint. And this is the heretic, right? So for her, it was about not identifying with either one of those projections, right? And to also be grounded when she was sharing things with other people, right? So then let's fast forward here when the famous Saturday Night Live, right, performance. I think she was 23 then, where she ripped up the Pope's picture, right? And so this would be like a fifth line, definitely a fifth line. She had the saint projected on her. She's so beautiful. Her music, it's so moving, right? She expresses what I can't express, like grief and loss and or anger, right? And then she gets the devil on her, right? By this action here. So what happens? So this is what happened with the fifth line here. So that's a picture of her at the Bob Dylan concert, like a couple days later afterwards, where she got booed and cheered. People in the audience were cheering her. They loved what she did, and they loved her and her music, and then others booed her. So that's the projection field, right? So you can see she stood her ground, right? She stood her ground. And unlike her past lives, right? Her past life is like, no, she didn't stand her ground. She didn't speak up for herself. She didn't protect herself. She didn't protect her child, right? She didn't speak the truth. She went along, right, with this deception. And here she is in this lifetime. No, I'm standing up for the truth, right? The truth is of what I know. And now we're seeing it, you know? Back in this day, was this 1992? Maybe it was 1992. I forgot what year it was. It was the early 90s. And this Catholic Church and the abuse of children, that wasn't really out in the open yet, right? That didn't really happen until 1999 and then the 2000s. And then that starts. So she was way ahead of her time. She was prophetic, right? So let's go into her. So she had to be strong. And this was I think another gift of hers in this lifetime, was she was given this fifth line, right? Because they're protected in a sense too, because they can see the fifth lines. If they're conscious and aware, they can see the projection field. Oh, they're just projecting this onto me. It's not me, right? It makes them strong. And they're here to reach a lot of people, fifth lines, right? So so each chart has a motivation. It's like this is the baseline of every chart. So you have this too in your natal chart. It's going to be different for each person because it's about your uniqueness, human design. So the chart motivation for her is guilt. It's called guilt. So she's got the karmic wound of shame from her ancestors, and then she's motivated by guilt. So and she can't escape it. So this is driven to fix people or things around her and provide practical solutions, That's when she's being herself. When she's in her shadow and pulled away from herself, I hope that someone will come and help me fix this, or that it will just fix itself. So originally I read that she was going to come out and rip an orphan child, a picture of an orphan child, which would be more, because her basic message was child abuse, stop child abuse. So I feel she was in this hope, and she stepped into her wounded child when she took this action, because motivation by guilt in fifth line, and plus she's got the left arrow. This is being strategic, right, and focused. This was not strategic and focused. This does not feel strategic and focused at all. This is that inner child coming out and ripping this picture. And why do I sense that? It's because when her mother died, when she was 17, 18, the major abuser in her life, the only two things that she took from that house was her mom's cookbook and this picture of the Pope that was sitting in her room, right, for years and years and years and years. And that's the picture she's ripping up here. This is what you've done to my mother. It's the inner child, right? It's the wounded inner child. It wasn't coming from her higher fifth line, right? Heretic. I'm a leader. The fifth lines are leader. I'm reaching a lot of people. I'm providing solutions here, right? And then her career started to tank after this, right? And also not fitting in with her 10th house, because the 10th house is also about taking your role in society, taking a public role and influencing and leading other people. So this could have been done a lot differently, and her message might have been reached, right, a lot. And it might have been a self-sabotage move too, that she didn't want this kind of fame, right? How do I destroy it? Leave in your comments what you think, right? So she was demonized, the fifth line after SNL, because she didn't offer people practical solutions. So what's really interesting now, and why she's so important, and because she's bringing attention to herself again through her passing on. A lot of people were moved by her, and they're remembering that in the early 90s. And what was going on in the early 90s or mid 90s, was Saturn was in Pisces, right? Saturn was in Pisces. And Saturn is in Pisces now again. And what does Saturn in Pisces represent? It's the strong desire to protect children. The sound of freedom's out now, and there's all this awareness building about human trafficking and child abuse, right? And she was going through her second Saturn return, and that's when she left the planet, right? Her second Saturn return. And this is what she had to deal with. That was Saturn is like, okay, you put this off long enough. We're coming through again, right? The age of 56, Chiron and Saturn, right? It's time to heal these wounds for good with the mother. And she was a big pot smoker too after she kind of retreated, right? And went off out of the spotlight for a while and had her children and stuff. She started smoking marijuana a lot. And that's about burying your anger. And so she wasn't channeling this. And at one point with emotional inner child work, if you've done it, you have to get below the anger. It's an emotional layer cake. There's anger, fear, grief. And if you don't go through all the way down to the grief, you don't really transmute it fully. You just stay in the angry stage. So she was getting called to do that. And then when her son died, this was happening too, right? With the grief, needing to get and connect with the grief. And she went through her Chiron return when she had that breakdown, when she had that famous Facebook live video when she was in New Jersey. That's Chiron return. So the wounding was coming up for her to deal with, right? So she had a strong desire to protect children, right? A strong desire to protect children, and by doing so, also healing her own inner child. So child abuse, just quickly, because this is in our fields now. This is what we all have to, we have to attend to our own inner child and our own inner child work. And the child never grows up. Where is it? Right? The wounded child in us never grows up until we heal. And how do we heal? Is we actually feel those emotions inside of us. And they're not coming from the present, they're coming from the past. Right? That's what my Phoenix Awakening the Sleeping Phoenix program is all about. Okay, so what is spiritually, what does child abuse do to the adult? Well, the emotional body never fully develops, doesn't fully develop. This is the 0 to 7 years old emotional body, 7 to 14, the mental body, 14 to 21, the physical body. So the emotional body never develops fully. It's like being stunted physically and you're always like short. You never fully develop. You don't go through puberty. Well, the emotional body doesn't go through that full development. We don't know what emotional intelligence is on this planet, but we have to learn because we're evolving through our emotional body. So it disconnects us from our intuition and we're unable to translate divine energy. And what I talked about with the information age, right? With Aquarius, right? We're learning to translate energy. We can easily be manipulated and controlled by external forces, right? Unconsciously dealing with stuck childhood emotions. So we can be triggered really easily emotionally from the outside world, right? From popular media. This gets us the go along, the get along. We never individuate. We never become our authentic self. And then it creates a false identity in order to cope, right? So we never our authentic self. And this means we're never truly happy and content. We're living someone else's life. Everything is externally referenced, not internally referenced. And we never truly grow and evolve spiritually, right? So it's really important. And she's a big part of this message. And she was sending this message very, very early on when Saturn was last in Pisces. And she has in her first Saturn return. And then now in Saturn in Pisces now. Okay, so where was she supposed to go in this lifetime? So there's the North Node, 6 of Pentacles in the 6th house in Taurus, to move away from the betrayal and the deceit and the trauma from her past lives to a simpler life. And I don't know what her life was in the last 10 or 20 years ago. Maybe it was this. This is getting connected to enjoying the body, letting go of all that shame, right? Good food, nature, simple things in life, right? And then it's connected to the 6 of Pentacles. And this is just sharing with other people. Okay. So that's what I have for Sinead O'Connor, just a quick reading. And if you're interested in getting a reading yourself, it's like way longer. It's like an hour and a half to 2 hours so that you can learn about your unique gifts. Like she was a famous figure. She made her contribution to the collective of humanity, but you're here too to make your contribution with your gifts and talents. Okay. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And all my links are below. Okay. Have a great day, evening, everybody.